I'm Alexandra August,
I'm Johnny Kolasinski.
and welcome to Got Thrones, a Game of Thrones podcast. We are here coming at you with our analysis of Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night. Johnny, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Cycloptico, occasionally at Queen Cersei Rio, where I take our president's tweets and incorporate them into the world of Westeros and her finest monarch.
It's a little too easy.
It's not work. And other than that, sometimes blogging about cryptocurrency on Medium.
And you can find me at ALX August. You can find my work at Screen Rant, CBR, Fandom, and soon to be StarTrek.com. And you can find this podcast at Got Thrones PCast on Twitter and Got Thrones Podcast on Facebook.
Yep. So with that, let's roll right into impressions of The Long Night.
Oh boy, howdy was I excited for this one.
I was incredibly excited for this one, and first I'm going to preface it with the fact that I went straight from watching Avengers Endgame directly to my couch for The Long Night, so I was a little emotioned out.
You had a really good pop culture orgasm that weekend, that Sunday.
I had a crygasm. We'll call it a crygasm.
Oof, yeah.
But I was a little emotioned out, and I was less... I think that the hype was huge for this episode, and I don't know that it lived up to it. That said, I thought it would be an amazing series finale, and I'm very interested, intrigued, and nail-biting over where we're going with 3 more episodes.
Yeah. I think I've been probably a little bit more vocally excited about this episode than you, just because Battle of the Bastards was a defining moment in this series for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not somebody who has a huge appreciation for realistic medieval battle strategy, and the thing is about George, whatever appreciation I have, George gave to me.
Mm-hmm.
Reading these books, reading about the Battle of Blackwater, reading about the Battle for Castle Black, and then seeing those, because the show had source material, seeing those exhibited on screen, those are some of David and Dan's best moments. Like, they are very, very good at executing George's vision because they understand production value. And for me, Battle of the Bastards, without an appreciation for medieval warfare tactics, even with a small one, like even understanding the Battle of Hastings and the importance of archery in that battle and all of that, I loved Battle of the Bastards. And I didn't really mind that Sansa didn't tell Jon that this huge help was coming.
That there was dramatic liberties taken.
Yeah, like it just didn't bother me that much because the exercise of realism was done so well, at least in my opinion, and I think is an important element to consider when viewing this series, is that one of the reasons Game of Thrones is so popular is because it steeps itself in a lot of realism, despite the fact that it's a fantasy show.
Yeah. Compare it to Lord of the Rings, since this episode gets held up against the Battle of Helm's Deep so much. Compare it to other fantasy series like MTV's Shannara series. Or
even The Walking Dead, the way they deal with zombies. Like, even dealing with those, like, we live now in a time where you kind of have to, if you're going to do a fantasy show, you have to deal with it based on realistic.
It can't be Xena anymore.
No, there's no magic thinking anymore.
Right.
Is the thing. You have to have very distinct rules for your universe, and
Gallivant was entirely tongue-in-cheek and still had and still had a lot more consistency than Hercules.
Exactly. And so coming out of that long intro, I really, really, really was excited for this episode because I thought it was like, oh wow, they're giving
you another half hour of Battle of the Bastards.
Another 90 minutes of it. The director of Battle of the Bastards is directing the biggest battle in Game of Thrones to date. Like, this is the biggest big bad. This is the thing in the books that is the looming threat. This is the thing in the show that they have been fighting to beat for a long time. And also, this is a character that doesn't exist in the books. The Night King doesn't exist in the books. So to me, knowing that means the Night King is sort of the concentration of this conflict. And so I expected them to take their knowledge of how George told them this would end, because we know that he did that, and to really drive it home with this. And as much as I liked the experience of watching it, upon rewatch, which I've done about 4 times now, it has some issues. I think as a standalone episode, it's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really good. I don't think it's as good as Battle of the Bastards. I don't think it's as good as Blackwater. I don't think it's as good as a lot of the other battle episodes in Game of Thrones. But Game of Thrones tends to shine in battle episodes.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that it's poo-pooing The Long Night so much to be like, oh, I don't think it's the best one. But at the same time, you look at Battle of the Bastards, and we had a really clear idea of what was supposed to happen, and then we saw most of it go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw that kind of lame Sansa rescue.
Deus Ex Baelish.
Yeah, and this was a Deus Ex Aria.
Yeah,
and I'm not mad at that. I gotta tell you, I really fucking love that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird. It's kind of a weird cognitive dissonance to have, that I don't hate what happened in this episode. And I really love that Arya's storyline, because you know me, I had her pegged to die.
Yeah.
And I love that it went the opposite direction, and that it was this little girl who all she did was work. All she did was work really, really hard to be the best Arya she knew how to be, and she kills the Night King. I think that's weirdly apropos. I just have a lot of problems with how they got there.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, I would imagine you feel the same way.
Yeah. I think it suffered a little, it had almost sequel syndrome of Battle of the Bastards was so spectacular, both from it was really, really good standpoint, and it was a spectacle. And this episode needed to be more of a spectacle. And I think that in doing so, it did everything
wrong,
10 times bigger and 10 times badder. But it made it less than the sum of its parts, like we sometimes talk about with Discovery.
That's a really, really good analysis of it, and I think that you really clinched on something that I've been trying to say, or trying to get to in my own analysis of it, which is that I loved so much of this. I really did. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of really amazing moments, but it didn't come together.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically, I keep referencing Battle of the Bastards because Battle of the Bastards gave us a very big, long meeting before they actually went into battle.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know what was happening with this one. We didn't understand why the troops were positioned the way they were. And there's been a lot of backlash from people who are educated in this kind of strategy, who are saying there's absolutely no reason the trebuchet should have been in front of the infantry. Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, there's backlash against the battle itself, and then there's backlash against the backlash. And a lot of the backlash against backlash is like, nobody knows how to run a medieval battle in these days. And it's like, well, not necessarily. Military strategy is built on military strategies. So when people who have been in the military are like, yeah, we learned, I have a good friend who is in special forces in the army. I know a lot of people who have been in the military, and their military education when it comes to strategy is based in strategic history,
mm-hmm.
which begins in land wars in medieval Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't necessarily begin there, but includes those major battles, because there were huge strides made. Like the Battle of Hastings is historic because of the way they used bowmen, because of the way they used archers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was key in Battle of the Bastards. So you can't necessarily give Game of Thrones a pass
when they've referenced it, when they've utilized it to good effect in the future,
exactly.
in the past.
Well, exactly. And when part of the reason Game of Thrones is popular is because it's a fantasy show that isn't Lord of the Rings. There aren't wizards all around. There aren't hobbits. There aren't
mm-hmm.
orcs. There are a couple of fantastical elements that make a huge difference, but really it's about real people doing real things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a bit of, as much as I don't like knee-jerk Game of Thrones criticism, I think there's a lot of real criticism to be made in the way this battle was structured.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak to any of those because I'm not in the military. But I can also be like, yeah, why weren't the trebuchets used more? Like after the Dothraki died or when they were dying.
Mm-hmm.
Why weren't they like, well, okay, actually I understand why they weren't fired when the Dothraki were dying because they couldn't figure out where they were. But like once there were no Dothraki anymore, fucking fire the trebuchets. What's happening?
I also personally, there was a little bit too much dragon on dragon confusion.
Oh yeah, as much as I loved well, okay, hang on. I'm going to redirect our conversation because I want to get us to the parts that we liked and the parts we didn't like.
Okay.
Because there's so much of this episode that I loved, but there's a lot of it that I didn't. I think you feel the same way. And I think the best thorough analysis will be going over that. So what was your favorite moment?
The most suspenseful moment for me was definitely Arya in the library. Favorite moment is probably going to be a tie between Theon and Lyanna.
Oh, yeah. Theon's death was, I think, in large part due to Alfie Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Theon's death was beautiful. Mostly because, like, that when he leans back after he's been stabbed, when he leans back and he's still looking at Bran, or he's still trying to. I feel like a lot of character deaths this episode were, like, they were dead and then they were dead. But Alfie Allen was so good at being, like, at just turning back.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing how happy Sansa was to see him and how grateful she was.
Mm-hmm.
That just, oh my God, that killed me.
For me, I liked Lyanna because it was the one time they had a death that subverted expectations.
Yeah, how so?
We didn't get any of the major players dying. Jorah's been off and on dead since season 5. Ed...
I know, right? Dude, since season 1 for me, I was like, dude, you're toast.
Ed, frankly...
Shocked he made it this long.
Shocked he made it this long. He's one of my favorites. But...
Dollar-esque.
Yeah.
Dollar-esque.
But he's not exactly a key player anymore. Ed Barrack has literally been dead 19 times. So
again, I was actually a little bit annoyed that Barrack got this much screen time. I was like, girl, okay.
Okay. But Sam stuck through. Davos stuck through.
Davos was a disappointment for me.
All of our Starks. Ghost is still around.
Supposedly. I did love that shot of Ghost riding with the Dothraki and Jorah. I thought it was weird, but I was like, I'm not mad at it. Not mad at it.
He's well trained. Or well warged.
I would say, honestly, one of my favorite parts was Arya.
Mm-hmm.
That really, like, say what you will about David and Dan, they know how to hit the money shots, and that was a money shot, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of Arya ending it all. I don't think it was supported at all by the show or in the text whatsoever. There are several prophecies that don't apply to Arya whatsoever, but I enjoyed that quite a bit. And I also really liked Melisandre despite her completely baseless introduction. I really would have rather her them have gone back to like, oh, she can be an old woman and have her just have been there the entire time and kind of put on her necklace and become recognizable and her come out and do that.
Oh, that would have been nice.
Yeah, right? Would have been. But, no. I would have liked that. But it didn't really take away the enjoyment of me for her going up to Jorah and saying, do you speak their tongue?
Mm-hmm.
And just by the force of her will, Jorah looking at the Dothraki and telling them to raise their swords, and her using a spell and lighting them up. That was such an incredible visual. And then them just going into the dark. That was the thing. Like the beginning of this episode and the end of this episode, I adored. There was such beautiful imagery, but the in between just kind of felt kind of unthought out. Like there wasn't a story, I
Yeah,
guess.
it was a lot of cool. It was very Saving Private Ryan, Chaos of War.
Which is something we already got in Battle of the Bastards. Like we
Mm-hmm.
got that when John is trampled
Mm-hmm.
and he watches his friend get trampled. Um,
I I did like once once the combat got into Winterfell, I felt like that confusion was a little more earned. I would have liked
Very
to
much
have
so.
had a better idea of who lived and who died from something other than next week on Game of Thrones. But overall, I liked the once they breached the walls a lot more. Basically, from when Lyanna got smacked around. I'm going to say Lyanna Mormont's name like 55 different ways over the course of this episode. Calling it out.
I really like, as sad as that was, I was happy it wasn't some, like I will say at the end of this, like emotion, I feel like I have two different reactions to this. There is my cerebral critical brain that's like, "Meh," but then there's my, love, emotional attachment to these characters, and I'm very glad Jamie and Brienne and Pod survived. I'm very glad Grey Worm survived. I'm glad Tormund survived. I'm glad Sam survived. Actually, Sam was probably my favorite character this entire episode just because I feel like he really behaved the way his character told him to behave.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Ed died, he ran. And
I
he's
don't
not
think
a great
that's
fighter. And I think that made a lot of sense. And I think that him crying and John seeing him and John walking away was really, really heartrending, but ultimately very earned.
I actually disagree on that. I think that the Craven Sam has been dead for a long time and he hasn't realized it.
But I don't
And
think this was Craven.
I I think that Sam has been through this before, and this is bigger and badder. But I think Sam deserved time to recognize that. Wait a second, he's fighting for his woman and his son.
That's a good point. Because my initial reaction to what you just said was just that, like, it doesn't matter what you've done in the last 7 years. Like, this is the end of life. This is life and death.
But he's faced this before at
But
Craster's, at the Fest of
right,
the First Men.
but not. He's never been swamped by zombies. He's never been faced with this much. He's never been faced with his own inability this much,
Um,
and on all sides. And he's never seen his friends die in. Well, he has.
yes, he
But,
has.
yes, he has. I don't think what I also liked about that, what I'll draw a comparison, is that Sansa in the Crypts, because Sansa in the Crypts to me immediately made me think of Sansa in the Red Keep
Mm-hmm.
during the Battle of the Blackwater, and how Cersei was just getting wasted, and Sansa in like her armor, and Sansa was like, well, okay, let's maybe sing a song so people
Sansa
here
was
don't
a leader.
freak the fuck out. Yeah. And in this one, she was very much like, we can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do anything. We are sitting ducks, and that's the truth of it, and we got to face it. And I kind of liked that this battle wasn't the same as any other battle that anybody's faced. And the idea of Sansa not trying to make everyone feel better and just being like, we're all useless. So we all need to, was her kind of seeing Cersei's side of it a little bit.
Okay, that's interesting.
That kind of came full circle to me, which just made me think that, like, okay, this is a battle that, like, we can't really take anybody else's previous characterizations to see how they're going to behave. This is very different. Like, the Dothraki were swamped in the first fucking minute, and they're supposed to be the fighting force that made Robert Baratheon terrified that his crown could be threatened.
And they were
and
on an
rightfully
open
so,
field.
on an open field. And really what that did was, seeing them get swamped was like, the numbers are nothing like what you thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
These people can beat you just by crawling over you.
I want to go back to Sam for a minute and compare Sam and Sandor Clegane.
Oh,
because
yeah. Sandor was a little bit disappointing to me.
Because Clegane had his same moment of terror that he had at the Blackwater, where he turned tail and run. He was done with it.
It's done. We're defeated.
Yeah.
It's over. It's not worth it.
But then he saw Arya, and it was like a magic mushroom in Mario.
Yep.
Um,
I did love that moment when he picked her up.
I liked that moment too, and I think Sam needed that same moment.
I agree.
If that's the story we're telling about Sandor Clegane, and if Sam's surviving this, then Sam's surviving this, learning that he's the same man he was in season 1.
Well, I don't know that it was the same Sam in season 1 as I think it was just Sam who had been, like, I think it was very indicative that in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, we see Sam go up to Ed and be like, listen, I killed a White Walker, I killed Thens, and Ed's like, Then. And then Sam follows it up with, and I stole a considerable number of books from the Citadel. When he said that, I was like, this isn't going to be stealing books from the Citadel. This isn't going to be killing one Fen. This isn't going to be killing one White Walker. You are going to have to actually perform like a warrior, and you aren't equipped for that. And I feel like the best the show did for that character was be like, at some point, Sam just fucking starts crying.
I think if we're going to get that from Sam, we need to get that from more people.
Fair.
That's...
yeah.
Because otherwise it's a character flaw. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I feel that. I really loved the moment between Arya and Sansa when Arya sees what's happening and tells Sansa, "You go away, go to the crypts." And Sansa's, "I'm not leaving my people," and Arya hands her the knife and is like, "Go to the fucking crypts. Do you hear me right now? I'm not your little sister. I'm the person who's been through this, or at least can see what's happening." And Sansa looks at her, which is what I have been saying since fucking day one. Dany needs to pick up a sword, and so does Sansa. Sansa gets that knife and says, "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to use this." And Arya says, "Stick him with the pointy end," which was kind of, but oh my gosh, also I fell apart when Tyrion kissed her hand. It was like after we had like said last week, like 2 weeks ago, like we didn't love the lack of compassion between them. That was just so fucking remarkable.
I liked them. Again, I think that the Sansa that's been through so much would have been a little bit more composed in the crypts. But I liked that a lot. I liked that she was still, it's like, whether or not you like the Sansa v. Dany dynamic, it still came into play even in this danger. I liked that. Between her and Tyrion and Missandei.
Yeah, it made me feel really bad for Missandei, and I liked the fact that Missandei was like, "Listen, if she weren't here, we'd all be fucking dead." And I like that she just walked away and was like, "Screw you, you can die on your own."
I'm gonna go to this other corner of this script. I'm gonna go sit next to some other dead people. Thank you.
Well, I think this leads us to a necessary conversation of the fact that the show's relationship with the mythology of the books, and how the Starks in the crypt are holding swords of iron, and in the books, the White Walkers do not like iron. It's kind of a very, like, universal fairy mythology says that fairies don't like iron, and we were all kind of expecting, like, oh, okay, well, the Starks are in the crypts, and everybody's in the crypts, and maybe, like, the Starks are gonna, like, the people in the crypts are gonna rise up, but, like, I think that all book readers, at least I did, I thought, well, if they're going to rise up, they're going to rise up to help. Yeah,
because the crypts were also a place of the kind of deep magic that the wall is made of.
Exactly. And they're a holy place. They're a place where Baratheon goes. They're a place where it's where Ned Stark is. It's where Catelyn is. It's not a place where evil comes from. And you like to think that it was immune for a reason. And George has definitely written that into his books. Like, it's not, and I had a lot of faith in D&D that they would remember the big stuff, or they would honor the big stuff, and they didn't. Not with the stuff rising in the crypts. I was actually really that was a big disappointing moment for me, was when everybody who was in the crypts was in danger because the bodies in the crypts could rise up, which makes no fucking sense because John would have known that.
Yeah.
Everyone would have known that. It's like, okay, well, you can be down in the crypts. We're going to clear out all the bodies first.
Mm-hmm.
But no one did that. And so that was extremely frustrating to me. It provided for a great moment between Sansa and Tyrion, but I was very frustrated with the idea that, like, oh, all of a sudden, all of these people are going to rise up and kill people there. But not Gilly, and not Little Sam, and not Sansa, and not Tyrion, and not Varys.
Right.
Which I think brings me to a moment of, like, there was, I hate to say this because I don't like to quantify it like this way, but there weren't enough dead people this episode.
Yeah, it was very safe as far as that goes.
Which makes me really fucking scared for the next 3 episodes, because now I feel like people are going to die pointlessly.
Yeah. Pod could have died defending the crypts.
Mm-hmm.
Defending Brienne. Defending Jaime.
Yep.
But
now Pod's going to die somewhere stupid.
Yeah. Everyone except for Beric Dondarrion, who I'd say pouring out, but meh.
Yeah.
Who was at our little funeral scene is still around. Everybody who was listening to Jenny's song made it through, with the exception of the guy we've seen die 18 times.
Yeah.
And I think that was all really safe. And we're doing one of those things where we're having a down on the episodes. And
yeah, but
I
this
think
isn't
it's
Star
because,
Trek. This is Game of Thrones.
I think it's because we saw a lot of dramatic potential that wasn't fulfilled.
It really wasn't. I mean, I'm saying, like, in the episode. Like, things happen in the episode that I was like, oh, this is going to go this way, but it's not. I think Melisandre is a great example. Just what I said before of, like, how you guys, like, wrote her this scene where she took off her necklace, which was kind of against canon and kind of against the ability, kind of against that second season scene or third season scene where she's in the bathtub and Selyse comes and visits her and her necklace isn't there and she's still young. And you can work your way around that mentally or, like, plot-wise. But she has the ability to behave like an old woman, and you guys had written her into this idea that she wasn't there, and she could have been there. She could have been at Winterfell. She could have been at Winterfell the entire time. It would have been awesome. Would have been amazing. But she wasn't. She just rode out, like, undetected by the Night King, even though she's a priestess of R'hllor, which you would think would be detected by him if he has this much power. And then she gives everyone fire. They all die. Then she does it again. Mm-hmm. Which I wasn't mad at. That was one of my favorite moments. I really liked it when Melisandre lit the trench.
Yes.
Wasn't upset about that. That was pretty cool. I loved how, too, she immediately bonded with the Unsullied because Melisandre was a slave and so were they. Mm-hmm. And so when she rode by him, it was like, Vala Mogulas. And they were Vala. And Grey Worm is almost surprised by it and says Valar Dohaeris. And then all of a sudden she comes out with a squadron of Unsullied and lights the trench. That was fucking amazing. And yet there was no fucking support for it. Mm-hmm. No connective tissue for that. No cool bit where she could have just whipped off her fucking cloak and been like, I'm young again. I'm Melisandre. And then Davos's only role in this episode was to react to Melisandre.
Yeah.
I'm like, Davos could have died. You could have given me Davos's death, and I wouldn't have wanted it, but I would have gotten it. No. I would have good, but
instead, like I said, one of my favorite moments was Lyanna dying because it was the one surprise.
Yeah.
The timing of Ed was a jump scare. Ed not making it through, not exactly unexpected.
Yeah, and I will say I didn't mind Jon's general uselessness this episode. Not necessarily upset about that. I loved the dragon dance.
I hated the dragon dance.
Well, okay. I liked the dragons up against the moonlight. In terms of the Night King fighting Jon, that was fucking worthless because we couldn't fucking see anything. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't tell who was Viserion and who was Rhaegal. Right. And I still, Johnny Kolzinski, I still cannot fucking tell you if Rhaegal is dead. I'm guessing yes, but I don't know. And that's a fucking problem.
I think they're both in the trailers next week. So I think all of our dragons pulled it through.
Well, I hope so, except for Viserion. And
Yeah.
then at the
Well, he was dead
like
already.
in terms of like the after the episode, they were like, "Oh, Viserion's face is half ripped off," and I was like, "Was it?" I couldn't tell because it was very dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
How did you like the score though?
I I liked it, but I haven't done as many rewatches as you did, so I don't have like a
82? I understand.
yeah. So I don't have a visceral. This was incredible.
It was pretty good. Like the very end sequence
Hmm.
of them, like basically the piano began when Tyrion and Sansa were having that conversation behind the coffin when everyone was dying behind them, which was kind of problematic. But it was basically when Tyrion kissed her hand and they both parted ways and went around the coffin, which is like basically all I could have asked for this series because I like weird couples. But it was when that happened, then it flashed to Jon, then it flashed to Dany, and then it was just that kind of slow progression of the Night King's forces attacking Bran
Hmm.
in the Godswood.
And Theon slowly running out of arrows.
Yep. And then Bran basically telling him, like, you're a good man. Go and
Yep.
die for me. Go and die for me.
Yeah. Bran showing back up.
Yep. Which, at first, everyone made fun of him as like, oh, Bran just went away. But I
Yeah.
guess the idea there was that
Bran just put his out of office message up.
But I guess the idea was that the Ravens would come and attract the Night King. That the Ravens would be like, hi, I'm here. That's why he did that.
I
Which
thought it
didn't.
was something different.
What did you think?
I thought it was him confirming that everything was in place
To whom?
to himself.
Oh,
Th-
that works too.
This is, I know everything that's supposed to happen to get Arya there with this dagger at the right time. I know that I know that Theon's gotta make this sacrifice, but he can't make it too soon or too late.
Right.
I know that Jon's gotta hold off Viserion. I know that that the dead are gonna rise in the crypt. I know that they're gonna break through. I know that a lot of nastiness is gonna happen, and a lot of people that I've never seen before are gonna die because they're all extras. But if something goes wrong, I need to know, and something can go wrong because I'm fighting with the one other person with this kind of forethought and knowledge.
Yep.
That's why I thought he was in the Ravens. But
I definitely thought it was just really dumb.
to
As
go
I was watching it, I was like, this is dumb. But I was probably wrong.
the opposite, or the other possibility would have been him just sitting there saying, okay, Theon, shoot that one, but don't die yet. Shoot that one, but don't die yet. Shoot that one, but don't die that. Don't let that one kill you. Okay, this one kills you, but you're a good man.
I guess it's just problematic for me that the show has never bothered, again, since season 4/season 5, the show has never bothered to really define anything. They've kind of kept themselves in the dark and kept themselves like, okay, well, if we keep people off balance enough, we can just production value them out of any real criticism. And we don't still know what Bran is. We don't know if he can see the future. We don't know. We know he can affect the past a little bit, but they haven't indulged in that. We don't know how much of a connection he has to the Night King. He said it once this season, but he could have offered a lot more information. Like, he could have been utilized a lot more. Like, Jon could have been like, okay, Bran, be a Raven and figure out exactly where he is and exactly what time he's going to show up. Like, why didn't we know that he was going to, like, come through the wall until just then? It's just ultimately very messy storytelling, and it was very, very satisfying.
In the context of this episode.
In the context of this episode, and what really worries me, is that the shit that David and Dan are not good at is the political, very complicated relationships that George was amazing at writing, which they were great at executing.
Mm-hmm.
But now they've given themselves 3 episodes. Unless the Night King comes back, which I will be very disappointed if he does. Please don't.
I've not heard that theorized anywhere, and that I will eat my microphone. I will eat my pop filter if that happens.
I'm eating my pop filter right now. Like, I don't want that to happen. But at the end of the day, we have 3 episodes left to deal with the politics of Westeros. And the politics of Westeros are very simple right now. It's Dany getting rid of Cersei.
It's Dany getting rid of Cersei, Sansa and Dany getting along, and someone conceivably getting rid of Dany because she's Aerys 2.0.
And none of those options do I really like.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Or Cersei and Ronnie, Thelma and Louise it
God, I hope
straight
so.
into Blackwater Bay.
Or just like Cersei being like, I'm gonna be a fucking pirate now.
Yeah.
You guys can have your
Cersei,
realm.
the Queen of the Pirates?
I'm gonna exactly.
That's our spin-off.
No one listens to me. But the best ending for this series is for Cersei and Dany to shake hands and Cersei to be like, I'm just gonna go.
And Cersei steals and Cersei winks because she stole his hand of gold.
Yep.
Roll credits.
She stole the Infinity Gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
And bounces.
And then we get a voiceover from an older little Sam talking about this was the best summer of his life, and where everybody ended up.
I don't know that we can finish this podcast any better.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going with this.
I think that's where we're going with this.
All right. Well, if that happens next week, you can tune in to GoT Thrones.
And thank us for predicting it for you.
Yeah. There's frantic rewrites going on right now.
Right now.
All right. Thanks, folks, for listening to us rant a little bit more than usual.
A little bit. We'll be back on time on Tuesdays next week. We promise. Jenny's that little sure was very right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for bearing with us on this, folks. It's a tumultuous final season. We will see you next week.
Yes, we will. And who the fuck knows what's going to happen? Because we sure don't.
Yeah.
Because there are 3 episodes left with David and Dan trying to figure out political story, and I am not.
And Arya and Gendry. My wife Katie wants to know what Arya and Gendry's conversation tomorrow morning is going to be like.
They're going to be kissing because they were in the fucking preview.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Hey, I met your ex.
Oh shit, that's right. I didn't think about that. Your ex was so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I did love that moment. I will say, despite how stupid it was, I did love Melisandre. I'm gonna go rewatch it right now, right after we're done. As much as I hated on this episode, I really loved it. I'm literally gonna end this episode of our podcast, turn off the microphone, and watch the scene between Arya and Melisandre. And Melisandre says, "Green eyes, brown eyes," quote, and blue eyes.
Yep.
And Arya just leaves.
Yep.
All right, folks. Thank you so much. We will see you next week.
See you next week.